I told myself it was just a brief escape, a small chance to feel alive again. My husband, Daniel, was a good man, but lately our marriage had slipped into nothing but routine, silent dinners, tired mornings, and empty words. Then Ryan, an old flame, reached out and promised me excitement. I gave in. I planned a secret trip with him, telling Daniel I was going away with friends. To make sure nothing got in the way, I blocked Daniel's number before boarding the plane. The trip was everything I thought I craved. Lavish dinners, bursts of laughter, and stolen kisses that made me feel young again. With Ryan, I pushed aside my responsibilities, my vows, and the man waiting faithfully at home. Each night, I convinced myself this was harmless, that once I returned, I'd slip back into normal life and Daniel would never know. I believed I was clever enough to hide it, but in quiet moments, guilt pressed against my chest. I ignored it by silencing my phone, refusing to check in, avoiding even the thought of his voice. I didn't want to see his calls, his messages, or his concern. For 1 week, I lived inside a fantasy while Daniel sat at home, not knowing where I was or why his wife had vanished. When the trip ended, dread and relief tangled in my stomach. On the flight home, I unblocked Daniel's number, expecting dozens of missed calls and desperate messages, but there was nothing. My chest tightened. I told myself he was probably giving me space, that maybe later he'd scold me for being unreachable. I walked into our house wearing a forced smile, ready to pretend nothing had happened. But something was wrong. The place was too quiet. His shoes weren't by the door. His jacket wasn't on the chair. The familiar scent of his cologne was gone. On the kitchen counter lay a letter with my name written in his familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Emily," it began. "I don't know where you went or why you shut me out, but your silence told me everything I needed to know. A husband should never have to beg for a place in his wife's life." I waited. I worried. And I realized I deserve more than being shut out of your world. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I won't wait for explanations anymore. Goodbye. The words cut deeper than any argument could. My chest burned, my knees buckled, and I collapsed into a chair. I wanted to call him, to scream that it wasn't what he thought, but I knew it was exactly what he thought. My betrayal had spoken louder than any defense I could offer. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of Daniel. He ignored my calls, my messages, even the letters I mailed to his parents' house. It was as if he had erased me from his life completely, leaving me to sit in the silence of a home we once shared. I had traded loyalty for temporary excitement, and the cost was permanent. Ryan tried to reach me afterward, but I ignored him. Suddenly, the thrill I once chased felt sickening. He was never a part of my future. He never had been. All I wanted was Daniel back. But the more time passed, the clearer it became that he wasn't coming. He had finally chosen himself over me. I began to notice the little things I had once taken for granted. How Daniel always made sure my car had gas. How he left fresh coffee ready each morning. How he called me home whenever I felt lost. Now those small acts of love replayed in my mind like punishments. I had wanted excitement, but in chasing it, I destroyed the stability that truly mattered. My friends began to notice the change in me. They asked why I looked pale, why my wedding ring was gone. I couldn't bring myself to tell the truth. Instead, I whispered that Daniel and I had simply grown apart. But the reality was crueler. I had shattered something unbreakable, and he left before I had the chance to beg for forgiveness. Months later, the divorce papers arrived. They were cold, straightforward, without anger or bitterness, just finality. Daniel didn't want revenge. He didn't even want to fight. He simply wanted freedom from me. Signing them felt like sealing the coffin of the life we once had. Sometimes at night, I still pick up my phone and stare at his contact, wondering if he ever thinks of me. But I know I'll never hear his voice again, never see his gentle smile, never feel his quiet love. That single choice, the trip I thought was harmless, didn't just break my marriage. It erased the man who once promised me forever. In the end, I learned love isn't built on excitement or passion alone. It's built on loyalty, respect, and the quiet comfort of trust. I lost Daniel because I forgot that. And though the world moves on, my heart remains haunted by the memory of the husband I once silenced, only to realize too late that he had silenced me forever.